How are we doing now, Emma? The live stream is now live, it says in the message box.
Yes, that's right, Chairman. We've just had confirmation that the live stream is now live.
Chairman, it's Emma. I'll do a roll call and see who's present. Councillor Atherfold?
All present and well fed.
Thank you. Councillor Bass, as you say, has left the meeting now.
Yes.
Councillor Brown?
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Bull, you're present. Councillor Dyer?
Yes, I'm sitting here.
Thank you. Councillor Greenslade?
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Jewell?
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Kenny?
Yeah, I'm here.
Thank you. Councillor Martin?
Yes, present.
Councillor May?
Present.
Councillor Mould?
Yeah, I'm here.
Councillor Thomas?
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Williams?
Yes, I'm present.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairman. I think everybody's present now.
Smashing, thank you. Well, I hope you're all refreshed. Just before we move on to this next item, I've been informed through the lunch period that the highways officer has to leave us at 2:45. So when we get to questions of the planning officers, those that have got questions for the highways officer, can you come to us first, please? Right, having said that, we move on then to agenda item 4.5, PA 20043346, Mr. Fritz Moller, 15 Polkert Hill, Mevagissey, demolition of structurally unsafe dwelling and construction of new dwelling on the same footprint. Ellie Jolliffe is the planning officer. Over to you, please, Ellie.
Okay, thank you. Can everyone hear me?
Yes,
Yes.
thank you.
So the application seeks approval of the demolition of a structurally unsafe dwelling and construction of a new dwelling on the same footprint. The key issues are the impact upon the conservation area, design of the replacement dwelling and impact to neighbours. So this shows the location of the site on Polkert Hill in the centre of Mevagissey. This slide shows the application site within the wider context of the conservation area and its relationship with listed buildings. Similarly, this is the aerial. So the amended block plan shows the existing footprint of the dwelling and its associated amenity space to the rear. The existing plans have been amended following the last committee meeting. This shows the current internal layout and the appearance at current. As you can see, the dwelling is to have broadly the same proportions as the existing building, though note that since the previous committee, the roof height has been raised as demonstrated by the proposed drawings on the screen. The proposal reinstates the stonework to the ground floor as a strategy to retain some of the existing historic fabric, which could have been otherwise lost. The new timber frame windows will have a vertical emphasis in replacement of lower quality UPVC windows and doors. No objection has been raised by the historic officer in response to the raised roof height. Overall, the details are seen as more appropriate for the setting of the conservation area. So moving on, this photo shows 15 Polkert as labelled and its relationship to the adjoining property Whalebone Cottage. Shows the dwelling coming up Polkert Hill from the other direction. This picture shows the rear of number 15, and as you can see, the roof is currently in a slightly poor state. This is some aerial footage which shows the existing roof connection to the adjoining cottage. These photos show the relationship to number 13 in the garden. There is already an existing lack of mutual privacy here, and this therefore minimises concerns of overlooking from new rear openings. It is noted that no changes will occur to the associated garden levels, and this will remain the same as existing again. And again, the relationship to the other cottage. So overall, the proposal does not introduce material harm to the occupiers of neighbouring properties in terms of overbearing, overlooking and loss of light impacts. This proposal would result in less than substantial harm to the surrounding conservation area and setting of nearby Grade 2 listed buildings by reason of the complete demolition of the existing building and associated loss of historic fabric. And the replacement dwelling will result in a higher quality home, which will result in a visual enhancement to the area. I just have a few points to raise since I've written the addendum. So I just wanted to add that I re-advertised the amended roof plans on the 15th of January, and this expires today. Subject to no new overriding planning considerations being raised by third parties through the consultation process, we're recommending delegated powers to approve. And further to this, we've had formal comments from Highways. These have been received in light of the CTMP, and the comments are as follows. This document is accepted for planning purposes only, and any additional secondary consents under highways and streetworks legislation are required. Thirdly, an email was received from a third party suggesting an alternative approach to the scheme using a steel frame strategy to retain the building. As you know, we're basing our decision on the submitted information only, which, as you're aware, includes the full demolition of the building. And finally, Mevagissey Parish Council have responded to their final consultation, and in summary, they've maintained their objection based on the understanding that the associated road closure will be detrimental for the community. They also wish for the retention of the building to be explored further. That's everything from me, thank you.
Thank you. We do have a resident speaking in objection, that's a Mr. Peter Boker. Mr. Boker, are you there?
Chairman, if he could dial *6 to unmute his telephone.
Mr. Boker or Bowker, I'm sorry if it's the wrong pronunciation. Can you hear us? Hello, Mr. Boker, can you press *6, please?
Mr. Baker has joined via telephone, but he does need to press *6 to unmute.
Can you hear us, Mr. Boker? You need to press *6 on your telephone to unmute.
If this isn't working, then I would suggest that Mr. Boker hangs up and redials into the meeting and we can readmit him.
He's certainly shown as muted, isn't he?
He is, Chairman.
Hello, Mr. Boker. Mr. Boker, if you can't press *6, then can you redial into the meeting, please?
Chairman, perhaps you want to go on to the next speaker, and if I remove him from the meeting and then give him a call and ask him to rejoin, that might be quicker, okay?
Thank you. Then in that case, we will.
Hello.
Oh, hello, is that Mr. Boker? Hello?
Yes, I will. Thank you.
Is that Mr. Boker? Hello? No, I think we've lost him. In that case, we will move on. Councillor Gann of Mevagissey Parish Council will be speaking in objection. Are you there, Councillor Gann? Councillor Gann, can you hear us?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, is that Councillor Gann?
It is indeed, yes.
All right, Councillor Gann, we're having some trouble getting a connection with the resident speaking in objection. So we're going to hear you first, if that's okay with you. So Councillor Gann, you have 3 minutes to put your case and you'll be told when 30 seconds remain. Thank you.
Okay. My name is John Gann. I'm a chartered surveyor. I'm with over 30 years experience in property. I'm speaking on behalf of Mevagissey Parish Council. It's clear that the applicant is determined to demolish this property above all other matters, and this is not properly being understood. The committee are the decision makers in this matter and must decide what are material considerations and what weight these carry. Demolition is clearly a material consideration. There are many reasons why this should not be approved. The condition of the property is due to a lack of maintenance, and the applicant's reckless strip-out work started without plans, structural reports or notice to building control, and this is contrary to NPPF Para 191. As recently as the 14th of January this year, the Historic Environment Officer advised to me that there would be less harm to the significance of the building and conservation area if the fabric could be retained. This has now been ignored. The loss of the building is unjustified and contrary to Part 16 of the MPPF and Policy 24 of the Cornwall Local Plan. The case officer has made no effort to retain the building, but an architect has now produced an indicative scheme that could achieve this aim. Retaining the building reduces the risk of problems with number 17 Polkert Hill as well. Avoiding demolition would also achieve a minimal road closure as requested by this committee in November. The suggested road closure will impose a 16-mile detour for 250 homes to access key services for at least 5 months, potentially 200,000 extra miles being driven and pedestrians forced to use steep steps unsuitable for many as shown in the objections submitted. Surely these too are material considerations. The traffic management plan submitted is not an appropriate document written by a professionally competent in traffic management, as stated by Paul Steen of Highways in November. An explanation of his late approval of this document is required. Neither the Fire Service or Coast Guard based in Mevagissey have been consulted about these proposals, and concerns around social distancing on the steep steps were dismissed by the applicant as not being his responsibility. Other issues have also not been resolved. The new window to the rear elevation that looks only into the garden of number 17 was objected to by the neighbour without a response. Works to the back garden are mentioned in the various documents, but there are no drawings to record these despite the request from the Historic Environment Officer. This application is seriously flawed due to ignoring the options to retain the structure, and approval will simply pass the problems to other departments within Cornwall Council while having a serious and permanent impact on the conservation area and the residents of Mevagissey. We would respectfully ask that you refuse this application.
Thank you very much, Councillor Gann. Are there any
Hello,
questions?
Chair. It's Peter Bowker. Can you hear me?
Yeah, just a moment, Mr. Bowker. We will come back to you.
Thank you. I'll wait here patiently.
Thank you. Councillor Gann, if you wouldn't mind just staying there to answer any questions. Are there any questions of clarification for Councillor Gann, please? Councillor Atherfold.
I'm reading here that the building is structurally unsound. Has it been issued with a notice by Cornwall Council to say it's structurally unsound? And I'm not understanding why it is not reasonable to knock it down to make it safe.
So the applicant approached the council to inspect the property, and I've spoken to the officers in building control about this. They've served a notice to say that the building needs to be made safe, which is different with respect from demolishing it, in that there's other ways that the building could be made safe in order to retain it for its benefit to the conservation area.
Thank you.
Okay.
Councillor Greenslade, please. Vice Chairman, you've got a question, please?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Thank you. I think in your presentation you mentioned that the road up past this development could be shut for 5 months. What have you based that fact on, please? Could you enlighten us a bit?
So the construction traffic management plan submitted by the applicant, I was appointed by the parish council to engage with the applicant to discuss in detail and try and help with solutions and options on that. The management plan states that the construction period will be 4 to 5 months, but there's no contingency for weather or any other eventualities in his programme. And where he stated that there may be possible to reopen the road during some times, we still haven't seen things like an elevation of the scaffolding plan that's proposed to bridge across the road, which is only just wide enough for a vehicle to pass through anyway. So any loss of width in the roadway will effectively render it closed.
My question's been partly answered, Chairman, but I would assume that the road could be opened before all the building work was undertaken, as working from inside the building rather than out in the road.
Right, thank you, Vice Chairman. Thank you.
And can I also ask the gentleman, is he representing himself as a consultant to the council or the council?
I'm a parish councillor, and I was appointed by the the parish council to represent tonight and also to engage with the applicant to try and find solutions.
Thank you.
Thank you. I see no other questions. No, Mark, would you concur, Vice Chairman?
Yes, I would, Chairman.
Yeah, thank you. Then thank you very much for joining us, Councillor Gann.
Thank you.
And we move back to the resident speaking in objection, Mr. Boker. Are you there, Mr. Boker?
Yes, I am. Hopefully you can hear me now.
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Right.
You have 3 minutes to state your case and you'll be told when 30 seconds remain. So thank you.
Thank you, Chair and members. I'm Peter Bowker, an RIBA member and chartered architect, having been a member of the profession for 60 years, now retired and living in Portmelon. During my time in private practice, I've devised many solutions to stabilise unsafe buildings, many listed where demolition is not an option. I inspected this property just after it was marketed as a potential opportunity, so I do know the building. The application as submitted involves demolition and rebuild of 15 Polkert Hill and a 5-month road closure, which is a huge inconvenience to me and all the other residents of Portmelon and beyond. I submitted a letter of objection to the parish council in which I stated my firm belief that this building could be stabilised by a partial steel frame which would restrain the walls and provide support for new floors throughout, including the roof if necessary. I copied my letter to the applicant, who rebuffed my ideas, said he had already considered such a solution, that it was not possible due to internal scaffold and the cost he estimated at £60,000 to £70,000 for the supply only of the steel excluding installation, a figure I find quite unbelievable. Through further exchanges, the applicant agreed that a new party wall was required to be built and that the rear wall was leaning badly and must be rebuilt, all of which can be achieved without wholesale demolition. The applicant's own engineer in the Penpol report states the walls up to first floor are in reasonable condition and could be retained. I offered the solution as my plan circulated to members that given the need for a new party wall and rear wall, shown in green on the plan, these would act as buttresses to front and rear gable walls with a limited amount of steel work involving a few columns, steel beams, all of which can be lifted from inside without the need for a crane. The applicant rejected my suggestion again, and it would seem that he is determined to construct a new, higher building in compliance with current building regulations, which, given the fact that the structure can be retained, restrained and improved, is unreasonable. I submitted my scheme to a local steel fabricator who estimates the total cost for design, fabrication and installation to be in the region of £10,000 to £12,000, and I've copied his quote to members at £10,500.
30 seconds remain.
It will be necessary to provide roof edge protection to repair or replace the roof. As there are no roadside properties opposite this site, it's a simple task to provide a bridge scaffold through which traffic and pedestrians can safely pass. Many buildings in Mevagissey have been improved in this way. This strategy means that the work can be carried out with only limited road closures for deliveries and offloading of steelwork. For these reasons, I believe the application in its present form should be
3 minutes, Chairman.
or deferred to allow time for the applicant
I have to stop you.
to adopt something similar.
Thank you, Mr. Bowker. I have to stop you at 3 minutes.
Okay, fine.
Thank you. Perhaps you could just stay there a moment, if you wouldn't mind, in case there are any questions.
My pleasure.
Thank you. Are there any questions for clarification, please? Councillor Atherfold.
You mentioned in your discussion about you know the building well by virtue of the fact you looked at it as a potential project for yourself. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Why didn't you go ahead with it?
I didn't think that the footprint of the building was sufficiently large. The views across the harbour were interrupted by other buildings, and it just didn't appeal to me as a project, and therefore I dismissed it. But whilst I was there, I was not alerted to anything really untoward about the condition of the building, and I've been in the profession for 60 odd years. All right, it's an old building, it will need restoration, it will need work doing, but it didn't strike me as being in any way unstable. and what's
Right,
made this
thank
building.
you, thank you. I'm sorry to stop you, but we do need just the
That's
question
fine.
answered,
That's
and
fine.
you've answered that, Mr. Bowker. Councillor Kenny, please.
Thank you, Chair. I've read your objection. Clearly, you're very concerned about the road being blocked, and we obviously need some discussion with Highways about that. If the road wasn't blocked for 6 months, would you still have an objection to what is proposed?
No.
So it is
No,
literally...
I'm very happy to see the building brought back to life, because it's an eyesore like a few other buildings in this stretch, and it needs to be improved, and I'd be very happy. And I said that to the applicant.
Yes, so what you've been suggesting is an alternative to blocking the roads, as opposed to saying you don't want to see it.
It is exactly that, and it can be done from inside the building. It is restrained by all sorts of scaffolding which can be adapted, and it can be done without demolition and without blocking the road.
Thank you.
Thank you. Vice Chairman, you're next, please.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I think the gentleman that's speaking now has answered the question for me, really, that the Mevagissey Parish Councillor didn't seem to want to answer completely. I think this gentleman is advocating that the road need not be closed. It could have a bridging scaffold. The majority of the work, when the front is sorted out, could be done from inside. I think that's the assumption the gentleman is offering. Would you confirm that, sir, please?
Yes, Vice Chairman, that is correct. As I've said before, the walls up to first floor level have been certified by their own engineer as satisfactory. So all this work can be done from inside the building, adopting an alternative approach than demolition and rebuild. Thank you,
Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Atherfold, you have another question?
Well, I just need a point of clarity on planning. If memory serves me correctly, disruption during construction is not a material planning consideration.
Well, you can
Am I
ask Councillor Atherfold. We'll get to questions of the officer a little bit later, and that's a more appropriate question for the officer.
Okay.
Thank you. Vice Chairman, I see no other questions indicated. Would you concur?
Yes, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Then thank you for joining us, Mr. Bowker.
My pleasure. Thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you. And we move on to Dr. Fritz Suttmoller, who is the applicant, speaking in support of the application. Can you hear me, Dr. Suttmoller? Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Good. You're a little bit quiet. I wonder if you perhaps speak up a bit.
I will do my best.
Thank you. Dr. Suttmoller, you have 3 minutes now in which to put your case, and you'll be told when 30 seconds are left. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Thanks for having us. In the last meeting, a few points were discussed. One is that the application was being rushed through. That was a wrong statement. We are now at the 8 months point. Our structural engineer provided urgent demolition needs for this very unsafe building the last time. And we have answered all the committee specific requests, and this has been updated in the LPA documents. For this meeting, we would like to stress that the application has listened to all viable and good recommendations. The dormer windows were eliminated, and we have also documented that the exterior finishing materials, which had been combined with the new roof design and natural slates, all has been approved by the HEP officer. The repeated public comments that this building is not in keeping with conservation area is incorrect, as it is almost identical to the original building. There seems to be concern more about traffic management than the building itself. We have already discussed this concern internally. The Parish Council requested that in mid-September, and we provided that to LPA as part of our plans. Streetworks then requested a non-standard construction site version. The company Ambron Limited produced this and has been since approved by Streetworks. I can give more details of this plan, but as mentioned before by others, it is an intermittent road closure during approximately 14 weeks and only necessary when safety concerns are high on the side of the roads. We have informed the parish council of this, and they have the new documents. We have and will continue to work with the neighbors, community, and parish council. We have answered all the parish and community questions, but we are very disappointed that this has not been reflected in the parish meetings and in their public reports. Councillor again suggested last week that most of his specific questions had not been answered, but he did not comment that the many emails that were replied in our personal email meeting with the builder were not mentioned. So all answers as far as we can tell. Also, we were informed that Mr. Brown was going to talk, and he has already mentioned his case. But again, our replies at the parish council were not commented on. We had investigated this option ourselves in the beginning. Hopefully the doubts and the concerns have been answered, and we now look forward to a favorable vote. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Would you mind just staying there for a moment, please, Dr. St. Muller,
Sure.
for questions? Thank you. Vice Chairman, you're first, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Good afternoon, Mr. St. Muller. I've posed the same question to the previous two speakers, and I would ask you the same thing. What is your view on the claimed closure for 5 months of the street in front of your development? Because it is being variously described as not being needed at all. It has been described as much needed, and you have offered the offer now of saying it could be intermittent and a very little impact on the road. I realise it's not a sort of a material planning permission, but I think it does cause a lot of concern for the people of Mevagissey. So I wondered what your take on it was, please.
Well, what I've been mentioning to everybody that we discussed, it is a 5-month project in the sense that it's from the very beginning until we move in. So that's a whole construction project. Now, what is then ignored by the council is that we have said we anticipate that the intermittent road closure will be a period of approximately 14 weeks, which is the scaffolding, taking the building down, and the rebuild and putting on the roof. After that, as you have mentioned yourself, is the work will be mainly internal, only requiring delivery materials.
Thank you, Chairman. That clarifies it for me. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Williams, you've got a question, please.
I have, Madam Chairman. As you well know, I brought this question up at the last meeting. Without repeating what Councillor Greenstaff just said, I find it very difficult why you need 14 weeks to do this, to keep the front of this building safe. You've got scaffolding, and you can hoard the scaffolding as well. Many places are done this way in towns, in the cities. They don't have closure of roads, and the impact, not just only for the village. You also, I was reading through the notes, the Coast Guard have made it quite clear if there is an incident over at further up the coast at Garnhaven, it would take extra 6 miles to drive around. Every second is important when it comes to safety, and I cannot see for the life of me why you cannot do that job, get it done up, and any safety issues within a week. You should be the maximum amount of time you close that road. You can certainly work within the actual site. It's just that you want to use the actual road as a building yard while you're doing the work.
Can you sum up? Can you ask your question?
Sorry, Madam. I just object to the closure of the road, and I think that he can take adequate safety precautions to prevent any damage to anyone.
Councillor Williams, your question to the gentleman.
My question is, have you taken a good look at what you can do to prevent closing the road?
May I answer?
Yes, please do.
Okay,
Please.
thank you. What is very clearly stated from the very beginning, this is a gantry scaffolding with a 5-meter clearance that all firework and emergency vehicles can pass at any time. We will stop work, and these now also personal emergencies can pass at any time because it is a gantry scaffolding. Therefore, there is never will be that this is a total closure, unless there is, there will be no total. Even the skips have a plan that they will, when we are sending the material away, has a plan of it being done immediately, and they can move out of the way immediately too. So there is no reason to state this fact. It is a gantry scaffolding that has access to emergency vehicles at any time.
Thank you very much. I have no further questions indicated. Would you concur, Vice Chairman?
Yes, Chairman.
Thank you. Then,
just a minute.
Oh,
Councillor May.
Yes, Councillor May.
Yes, sorry, Madam Chairman, I was a bit last minute. Could I just ask if any existing materials will be put back into the build? So any of the demolition stone, will that be put back into the build?
If the material is considered viable and in good quality, after it's been there for 200 years, we will use that again. Only if the builder people decide that the quality of the material is satisfactory for building control quality.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Sounds good enough to me. Thank you.
Thank you. I've got no further questions indicated, so thank you very much, Dr. Sutmuller, for joining us. And we move on to Councillor Mustoe. Are you there, please?
Yes, I'm here, Chair.
Hi there, Councillor Mustoe. Councillor Mustoe, you know the format. You'll be asked to sum up after 5 minutes, please.
Thank you, Chair. This planning application is exactly the type of case that should come to central planning for review. At face value, it looks like a simple request to rebuild a small property with a direct road frontage for which the applicant has requested to close the road. However, it is far from a straightforward request. Committee, I'm sure you're used to me. I speak on behalf of my communities at these meetings, speeding away a mile a minute with planning reasons as to why an application needs to be approved or rejected. I did that at the last committee meeting and this application was deferred. Councillors, the valid planning reasons I raised at your last meeting are still there. Nothing has changed. Documents provided by the applicant, including the construction traffic management plan, continue to be inadequate, with valid concerns raised by the parish council and local residents ignored or dismissed out of hand. These documents continue to be uploaded up to and including Friday night, with the committee to decide this application taking place on the next working day. Where is the public scrutiny in this? Officers from the planning department agree with me that the road closure issues are significant, but are saying that they are out of their hands, passing the buck to others within the council who are obliged to accept a closure notice if submitted once the plan and approval is received. This is not joined up thinking by Cornwall Council. Residents naturally look to the council to protect their interests. They don't care which department makes the decision. It is Cornwall Council as a whole that will be seen to be responsible for approving this application should it pass. Indeed, every officer I've spoken to in the meantime has had nothing positive and indeed quite the opposite to say about this application, and yet they recommend approval. So let me speak from the heart on behalf of the communities I represent, who, make no mistake, will be catastrophically affected should this application proceed in its current form. This small property has a direct road of approximately 4 metres, yet the applicant specifies he needs the road closed for 5 months. Yet this is the only road that connects a large section of the Medvigacy community with its local facilities. I refer the committee to the location map prepared for committee relating to this application. Note that the required road closure completely severs this map in half, north and south of the site. The north is the centre of Medvigacy with its essential shops, the chemist, doctor's surgery, churches and school. To the south lies some 250 properties in Pocket Hill, Portmelon and Bodrigan. Most are only occupied residential, together with a number of hotels and guest houses, part of our vital local tourist economy. These properties are all totally dependent upon this critical section of transport infrastructure to access Medvigacy village centre for all their essential local facilities. There are no local community or shopping facilities south of the proposed road closure. These two parts of Mevagissey Parish will be separated by the road closure. The only alternative pedestrian access is via 2 footpaths which both descend to the harbour side down steep and sometimes slippery steps unsuitable for the elderly and those with mobility issues. A large number of elderly residents will be impacted. Demographic data shows that 53% of residents in the large Portmelon Park estate are over the age of 60. For vehicular access, there is just no alternative neighbouring street that traffic can be diverted down. The only available data entails a 16-mile round trip down isolated rural lanes and a seafront section of road that is impassable in an easterly blow. Residents, tradespeople, tourists, delivery drivers, emergency services will all be required to make this detour every time they need to drive anywhere while the road closure is in place. Despite what the applicant states about emergency access, you can't drive an ambulance through a skip. Critically, the planning team has not considered the impact of road closure in their assessment of this application. They state that the road closure is not relevant to the assessment of the planning application and that the duration of time taken by the developer to physically complete the proposal itself is not a material consideration. But this has profound consequences for many residents who I represent, which subcommittee has to additionally take into account. Residents are understandably very frustrated and anxious about this road closure, which will have a major impact on their lives, incurring significant financial cost, longer journey times of rights of access into their own village centre. How can this not be relevant when making a full and proper assessment of the pros and cons of this application? A large number of representations have been made to both Cornwall Council and parish councils on this point, with legitimate objections to this application that should not just be dismissed. To summarise, this application has been made to demolish and rebuild a small property for which the applicant will close an absolutely critical section of local transport infrastructure in the centre of Mevagissey. This will completely sever community access to essential local facilities for some 250 households for an estimated 5 months, possibly longer. The planning team deemed both the duration of the build and its associated road closure to not be relevant in its recommendation for approval, so the committee has to additionally take on board residents' concerns and make that judgment call. As you have seen and heard, a local experienced architect has produced a cost-effective scheme to demonstrate that demolition is not necessary for the restoration of this building. Doing otherwise, as set out and as I have said previously, might be more convenient for the applicant, might save them money, but does not recognise the context of where this building sits, and in doing so is calamitous for the community. Yes, of course, this property needs extensive repair, but not this way. Such a significant community impact must surely be taken into account in passing final judgment on this application, and planning have ignored this in reaching their recommendation. I therefore respectfully ask the subcommittee to uphold the valid objections of both residents, parish council and myself, and on this basis reject this application. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mustoe. I'm just going to ask, because the highway officer has to leave at 2:45, Ben Kerno, Ben, would it be possible for me to take questions to Councillor Mustoe after I've taken any questions for the highway officer, please?
Hi, Councillor Bull. Sorry, I was on mute. Yeah, I think you can do, as long as nobody's affected by that. I don't think that'll be a problem. It's the guidance, isn't it? The running order. So I don't mind.
It's just that unless we do that, we're going to lose the opportunity for members to ask the highway officer anything. I've got questions here listed by Councillors Greenslade, Atherfold and Kenny. Would you three mind if I just ask for questions to the highway officer first and then bring you back to us?
I would be happy to address it.
Okay, thank you. In that case, members, do any of you have questions for the highway officer?
Yes, I do.
And that's Councillor Greenslade. Yes?
Yeah, I'll put it to the highway officer first of all, if I may.
Yep.
It's the issue of the 5 months closure. Now, I think Councillor Williams made the point that he couldn't see why it was needed to close for 5 months continually. And I would concur with that. And I would ask the highway officer if he agrees that it doesn't need to be closed for 5 months at all. He could use a bridge scaffold, he could use a gantry scaffold and still have access. So what is his view, please?
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you, Councillor Greenslade, and thank you, Chairman. Apologies for the time constraints. It's a product of the times, I'm afraid. The answer, well, the 5 months referred to in the CTMP is a broad principle. It's not suggesting that it will be closed for that entire period. It's what they're trying to work with in the absence of a formal streetworks application, which will follow the termination of this application. It can't be considered in advance because, as a number of members and officers are aware, is that the streetworks team are quite tied by government guidance as to when an application can be considered, and if it's taken in advance of a determination, it's considered planned works, which adds a considerable period of time to the whole process. So it was deemed, given that we don't want even longer time being spent on this, to keep it as unplanned works through the process they've got to consider. Now, in terms of other matters, the streetworks teams have advised that whilst they won't take an application at this time, they will have they will be controlling the closure in many respects, and there are things that they have to comply with. There are legal requirements for pedestrian access to certain properties in the vicinity, and they will push for things like having the closure left up overnight, and access for emergency vehicles will be maintained. So whilst they can't offer formal comment, they have offered informal comment, and hence the reason why we're relying on a secondary consent process.
Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you. I'm going to run down through my list just to see if the questions for the highway officer. Councillor Atherfold, is your question for the highway officer?
Yeah, it's a repeat of what I mentioned earlier. Are construction traffic inconveniences a material planning consideration?
No.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Councillor. That's actually a matter for the planning officer, but as far as I'm concerned, they aren't. They are to be managed. They're certainly not something that it's not an argument I could sustain an appeal on.
Okay, I thought as much. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Kenny, you've put happy to wait, so I assume yours is for the planning officer.
That's right. No, it was actually for Councillor Mostow.
Oh, right. Sorry, that's what I meant. I'm so sorry. Councillor May, is yours for the highway officer or the Councillor?
Yes, Chairman, it is, but it's mainly been answered only in and around times, because I know sometimes works won't start till after school children. Business traffic has gone through at 9:30, and then it's lifted again at around 3. So I don't know whether the highways officer can confirm that.
I think informally the guidance is that the applicants take responsibility for that section of road during a closure. However, the streetworks officer and the area network officer, Rachel Tatler, who knows the area very well, will be involved in that process and has been involved in trying to shape the documents that have gone through so far. I accept that we are all relying on a secondary process that will manage a lot of these matters, but I am assured by those officers that it's in their interest to keep this road open as much as possible. They fully appreciate the sensitivity of the network in Mevagissey. So it's in their interest as much as anyone else to keep that road open for all requirements such as school times, etc.
Thank you. Councillor Mould, is your question for the highway officer?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. It's just a quick question. If you close Polkert Hill, I'm sorry, I'm not really that familiar with it. Is it two-way traffic? And if you did have to close it, I mean, is it safe to leave for pedestrian footway? Even if you do close it, could you make it safe for pedestrians if you closed it to traffic?
In the absence of again, in the absence of a form application to streetworks, that's quite a difficult answer to give. They assure me that maintaining pedestrian access will be a priority. So that will obviously have to comply with our legislation, streetworks legislation, and also the key one being health and safety of the site. So the HSE would be involved in that as well. So maintaining safe pedestrian access will be a priority. There's no doubt there will be times when that won't be available, but the provisions that are in place ensure that it is managed to a safe degree for everybody.
Lovely. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Just before you go then, and thank you very much for attending today. Can you be really clear to me, because Mr. Sutmaller has just said, well, the road won't have to be closed. It can be managed. So can you be very clear for the committee as to what your understanding is as to road closure?
My understanding is does come from the applicant's documents, does come from colleagues' experience of similar setups and scenarios, and there will be times when the road probably does have to close, whether that be momentary for deliveries or the skip plan, let's say, is in place. There probably will be times when people are inconvenienced and disrupted, but the overall objective of the streetworks team will be to try and minimise that as much as possible. Now, I accept that it's difficult to forecast what that looks like when they haven't got an application, and likewise, I accept it's difficult for members on the committee to resolve to approve something without that information. But I think that is the way that the planning system is. We can't refuse on this, and we can't compel compliance with secondary legislation. So we have to an element, put faith in the streetworks team and the area network team, and assume that their principal role will be to deliver and maintain that network and keep it open as much as possible. I think it will be closed at times, but from what I'm getting from colleagues is that will be minimised as much as possible.
Thank you very much, and thank you for staying. Right, I'm going to go back now to the list of people who put their crosses in the box to ask questions of Councillor Mustoe. You still there, Councillor Mustoe?
Yes, I'm still here.
Okay, sorry about that.
That's all right.
Vice Chairman, do you still want to ask a question of Councillor Mustoe?
Yes, I do, Chairman, if I may. I think even more so now. I think Councillor Mustoe, in your talk to us, you said the applicant requests roads to close for 5 months, and I wrote that down as you said it. Now, 2 or 3 people have since said that it will be marginally closed when very necessary. The rest of the time it will be open. Now, there's quite a difference in full closure for 5 months and some closure when it's essential. So I wonder what your view is now on that, please.
Well, my view about the 5 months has been informed from the start by the applicant and by the documents that have been submitted by the applicant. He said it both in writing and in meetings with the parish council. Obviously, he's saying something different now. In the construction traffic management plan that's before you, the latest one that's come back with comments from Highways on Friday evening, it says, for instance, there that there's going to be it mentions the 5 months again, but it says specifically that that the road will need to be closed for 14 days for demolition of this building, which is just one period. I mean, as I think I said in the previous committee meeting back at the end of November, I think it was, that there is form on this road of a bigger building being demolished in nowhere near that amount of time, and the work being done in a much shorter length of time. So yeah, while I'd absolutely welcome it if they could do it with a minimal closure and these things about the being access open to the emergency services and pedestrians at all times, that isn't the information that I've been working off, and the information that the residents and the parish council and so on and so forth have been contacting me about. I think at your last meeting, the committee asked for a minimal closure last time, and there still doesn't seem to be a clear plan for this.
Thank you. Councillor Apple. Yes, please.
I think the highway officer has sort of sorted out that comment, because until the application is passed, they can't put into action a plan for the demolition work. So I think we've got to put the cart after the horse this time, perhaps not before.
Yeah, can I come back, Chair?
Well, very quickly.
Very quickly, sorry, Chair. Yeah, and I do understand where Councillor Greenslade is coming from. It is a very frustrating system, and as I think the highways officer said, it is I think you and us and the officers are all constrained by the system that we're working within.
Yeah, right. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
More concise questions coming, hopefully. Councillor Atherfold, is your question of the divisional member, or has yours been answered, the highway officer?
It's quite possibly the divisional member. It might be other members as well, but I'm just flicking through the minutes of the previous meeting on the 30th of November, and it seems to have deferred the application to do with the shape of the dwelling and its roof and the requirement of an HIA assessment. I'm not really hearing any of that from the divisional member. What's their view?
I think my view in terms of this, I think I allowed, because I wanted to work with Councillor Gann from Mevagissey Parish Council to get the maximum amount of information across without duplicating ourselves. I allowed Councillor Gann to sort of lead on the issues around the building itself, and I sort of majored on the road closure. As I've said, I think I've said before, the main issue that has been brought up to me by the vast majority of people who contacted me about this from Mevagissey and Portmelon is solely around the road closure.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
And Councillor Atherfold, you'll have a chance to ask questions of the planning officer in a moment. Councillor Kenny, your question, please.
I think it's going to be a simple yes answer. So can you confirm that the only objection that you have to this application is the road closure?
I think I have concerns with the rest of the application, but I think the only thing that has me calling it into committee is my concerns about the impact of the property, the road closure, and
so this is a yes, I think.
Yes.
Yes, thank you. Thank you.
Plan and consideration.
Councillor May, do you have questions of Councillor Mustoe?
I really wanted to know, Chairman, how many actual people contacted him to object about the application itself. Thank you.
So I've spoken with probably about 24 households, probably had emails from another dozen or so. I think I've tried to persuade them all to go to and object on Cornwall Council's planning portal. And I see there have been several more who have objected since the last meeting. But I would say I've had more contact from residents who are concerned about this than any other application in recent history that I've dealt with.
Thank you.
So 36 residents, Councillor Mustoe, would that be correct?
36 households.
Okay, and this the building back of this property would actually affect them, would it?
The closure of the road.
Only about the closure of the road?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Mould, is your question for Councillor Mustoe?
No, Madam Chair, thank you. I think probably my question's been answered. Thank you.
Thank you. I see no other indications for questions to Councillor Mustoe. Would you confirm that, Vice Chairman?
Yes, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Councillor Mustoe. Then we move on to questions of the planning officer, please. Are there any questions for the planning officer? Councillor Moult and then Councillor Kenny, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Now, it just seems to me that this is hinging on, it's a chicken and the egg. If we don't say yes to the building, then we've no idea if we say yes to the building, what the closure around the road's going to be. So we have to make a decision based on that, as far as I can understand it. Could you, the case officer, just explain to me, so if we say yes to this building today, we then go away for street works. Now, what if there turns out that the street works plan doesn't in any way resemble what we would hope or desire? What is our position then, please?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
So I wasn't sure whether I am muted. Yeah, to be honest, it's a bit of a tricky one. As it's been mentioned previously by others, it's not really within the realms of our decision. In terms of street works, I'm not 100% sure what happens if it gets to the point where they aren't able to agree something. I'm going to go to Gavasek to see whether he's got anything to add to that.
Yeah, thank you. So I do get your question completely, Councillor Mould. The issue is there, and we can all see the potential harm from it. We as planning need to assess what's been put in front of us, and we need to do that in the remit and the tools that's been provided with us to do that. The street closure and the extent of it and how that's managed is managed outside of this process. I can see the question, and I understand it completely, in that if we approve this planning application today, how will the street team deal with the application for construction of the road and all issues about closure and all other issues surrounding that? But that's not something for us to determine, and that's not a reason for us to refuse the application today. That's not a planning reason to refuse it.
Okay, so we can't actually say today, we're not going to allow you to build that house because you can't build it because you can't close the road. Yeah,
so we don't even know. So to be clear on that, Councillor Mould, we haven't got the information, the detailed information to close the road. So we don't even know the exact, no one knows yet the exact details of how it will be regulated and what's going to happen because the application hasn't been put in. So you're spot on, but I do get the concern and I share that, but this is the process we're in. If we were to turn it down for reasons of street closure, it simply wouldn't stand up down the track if it was challenged.
Well, this is where I'm trying to get to, because it seems to me that the actual design now may be okay, but it seems to me the process that we're being asked to determine is how you do it, not if you can and do we like it, because the design probably we could live with by the sounds of it. It's just that if we say yes to it and then it turns out that this turns out to be a major headache for everybody else involved and the road is closed or whatever, it's just two separate issues. It's just really confusing, but you've made it as clear as you can, Gavin. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Kenny, you're next, please.
Same sort of question to Gavin. Is this a national process that we are forced to follow rather than a Cornwall Council decided process?
I don't know, to be honest, is the honesty of that question. It's the process that we adopt in this council. I would suspect it is a national process, but I'd be speaking out of turn if I guaranteed that to you it was the case. But what I can tell you is that in Cornwall, this is the process that we follow. I only say I suspect it's a national process. I know it's a national process that impacts on road closure, what have you, isn't a planning consideration. I just don't know what sort of process other councils use to address that.
Thanks.
Can I ask a question, please, Gavin, while you're there? And that is, how far can we go on conditioning?
We can't. Do you mean conditioning in respect to road closure?
Yeah.
Yeah, we can't. It's not something we mitigate against because it's controlled by a separate process. Look, again, I'm saying I do understand your concerns, but what we need to look at today is what's in front of us as a planning application. That's the replacement of a house in a conservation area, and the issues associated with that, as Ellie set out in her report.
Right, thank you.
Chairman, if I may interject, sorry, it's Ben from Legal Services.
Yes.
Yeah, this is a difficult one, I think, for members, and I'm really sympathetic. But just to sort of add to what Gavin said, we've got to think about what are the material considerations, and we can be very clear that we are planners, so we can't consider other legislation, and the road closure will come under other legislation. And I know that's tough. But we have the same sort of issues with, say, licensing, where we're often having to consider those things, or, who will be using a building sometimes with social care issues. We've had similar things. So we know that, it's not a material consideration, and it is as simple as that. I'm afraid that it would be hard to defend a reason that's it's not going to be a material consideration. So I think we just have to be really sure that we've got our planning hat on today. Unfortunately, we're not experts on the road closure. I know that's difficult, but that's where we're at. And I think Gavin's explained that and Ellie really well.
Have we lost our chairman again?
Councillor Bull, are you there? Councillor Bull, can you hear us? I think Councillor Bull may have just dropped out of the meeting a moment. Could we just pause the meeting just until we get her connected again?
Got no
choice?
Yes, I propose you do.
Well, the Vice Chairman takes over.
I propose the Vice Chair takes the lead.
I'll second that.
Can we just wait just a couple of minutes to make, because I'm conscious you may have missed out on some of the debate, that's all.
Sorry, it's Rowena Brebner, meeting producer. I've just spoken to Councillor Bull. Her internet connection obviously has dropped out. She's trying to rejoin, but she suggests Councillor Greenslade continues the meeting in her absence, and she will join as soon as she can. So please continue.
Thank you.
Fred, over to you.
Okay, councillors, it's been proposed and seconded that I carry on with the meeting. Are you all in favour? Could you take account, please? Emma?
Yeah, can we just...
Yeah, Chairman, I'm not sure we need to actually take a vote on it. I think we can just proceed, but if you want me to, I can.
I think for the record, if you could.
Okay. Right, okay, I'll do an alphabetical roll call. Councillor Atherfold.
For.
Councillor Bull is not present. Councillor Dyer.
I'm in favour of Fred
Thank you,
taking over.
Thank you. Councillor Brown.
Yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Greenslade.
For.
Councillor Jewell.
For.
Councillor Kenny.
For.
Councillor Martin.
For.
Councillor May.
For.
Councillor Thomas.
For.
Councillor Williams.
For.
Okay, Chairman, Vice Chairman.
Councillor Mould is yes as well.
Oh, sorry, Councillor Mould.
Don't worry.
Okay, councillors, we will proceed. If you can tell me briefly, Emma, where we are at. I think we've had all the questions, haven't we?
Yeah, we just heard from Ben Kerner, legal officer, so we were still in the section on questions of officers, but I believe Councillor Bull has now joined us again.
Oh, magic. Welcome, Chairman.
I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry, folks. It's something, the gremlins are in my internet connection today. Yeah, thanks, Vice Chairman. And I will abstain on this because I've obviously missed some now.
If I could enlighten you, Chairman, before you proceed too far.
Right.
We haven't really progressed any business at all. We've been waiting for your reconnection, and we took a vote for me to carry on with the meeting, and then you've reappeared. So I think you can vote, really.
Right. Thank you. Thanks, Vice Chairman. So we finished questions of the planning officer. Yes. Right, thank you. Then we move into debate. Who wishes to start?
I have indicated, Chairman.
Oh, thank you, Councillor May. Right, thank you.
I'm happy to propose. We've heard that we can't sort out the street regulations. However, we did hear Rachel Tatlow's name mentioned, and I know her and her father are embedded in highways, and would hope. We also heard from the highways officer that the discussions have been taking place in amongst his colleagues. So I think we've got to have a bit of a leap of faith here. I've also asked the applicant if he's minded to reuse some of the materials, and he has said yes, if it's at all possible, he will. So I am happy to propose as set out.
Thank you very much. Councillor Jewell, I see you're next in line. Would you wish to second that proposal?
No, that was for somebody else. I'll withdraw that. I'll let someone else second that.
Right. In that case, can I ask you afresh to indicate who would wish to second, please?
I put my cross in the box, Madam Chair. It's Carol.
Carol, right. Thank you, Carol.
I am happy to second. In actual fact, I'm going to second because I do actually think we need to make a decision about this. And it seems to me that if we say no today, all we're doing is kicking the can down the road to come back at some later date. And it does need to be decided because it's very clear that whatever happens, the street works cannot be determined until we've determined whether you can actually rebuild this house. Now, and I take on board what has been said. When you say to a case officer, you know, how are they going to build this house? He'll say to you, well, it's my job to tell you that they can, not how they do it. And this is where the conundrum lies for me. But in order that we do put this thing to bed, and I have great sympathies with Councillor Mustoe, because I do understand how these narrow roads and houses impact on parishes and the raft of bad feeling that comes with them. So I do understand, and I have great sympathy, and I'm not seconding this because I think, because I'd love to say no, but I do think in the spirit of moving this forward and getting to the bottom of it, we need to make a decision. So I am happy to second Councillor May's proposal. Thank you.
Thank you. Before we go to any vote, I have a list of speakers wishing to add to this debate. Councillor Jewell, you wanted to come in next?
Yeah, just to throw another angle on it, I think we are missing a few points because on paragraph 26, you know, the amended plans show an increase in height of 0.85. So the building is definitely going to change. There's no doubt about it. And the first speaker of the objector did say that this can be done without demolition. So, you know, I just put that out there that it's not all plain sailing. It's not all about the roads. You know, this building is going to change. And is it for the better? I think not, but I mean, the highway is a separate issue, but I'll leave it there for the time, see what this proposal falls. If it does fall, I might propose something else. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Atherfold.
I'm at a loss to understand why this has come before the committee by virtue of the fact that the reason for deferment hasn't really been mentioned. And we've been, you know, talking about the roads, which is not a material planning consideration. So completely in agreement with Carol, we need to get this sorted.
Thank you. Vice Chairman, you're next.
Yes, very briefly, Chairman. I think the 5-month sort of closure of the road has been found to be wanting, and it's far, far less than that. And I have great confidence in Rachel Tatlow and her companions, and they will come up with a workable scheme, I feel sure. And I feel the applicant could put some scaffolding in place that would be a bridge over the road if necessary. And the flow of traffic could be pretty much full time with perhaps the occasional closure, which I'm prepared to live with. And I think the people of Mevagissey would be too. So I'm fully in support of approving today and let the street works go forward.
Thank you, that's very clear. Councillor Brown, nice to hear from you. Councillor Brown?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yes, sorry. No, it's saying that you can't, but you can. That's good. I'm certainly not voting for this proposition. I have considerable sympathy with what Councillor Mustoe has said, although I must just say, notwithstanding that, he is being a bit mischievous because he knows the respective powers of the Planning Authority and the Highways Authority as well as anybody else at this meeting today. But if you put that on one side, he is fundamentally right. If this is approved without appropriate conditions, we are really letting the people of Mevagissey down badly, and I'm not prepared to be associated with that. So I have two alternative propositions. Even if there are separate highway processes that have to be followed, there has to be a construction management plan for this development to be implemented. Now, I have confidence in the highways officers, especially Rachel Tatlow. I don't know whether I have confidence in the capability or the goodwill of the applicant, because I don't know them. And the applicant has been challenged by the objectors and by the parish council. So I would want either for the application to be deferred for another month, for a construction management plan to be placed before the full committee, and then we can consider it. The other point I want to make, which is the other option, is that we can refuse, because let's not forget, we're talking about losing an old historic building in a historic fishing village centre. And I think we've been far too light in the way that aspect of the planning application has been considered, both in the officer's assessment and in the discussion today. And I don't think we should lightly allow an old building to be demolished unless we are convinced it is absolutely unavoidable. And the evidence that we've had from people speaking today who are not lay members of the public or NIMBYs or anything like that, they are professionally qualified people, and they are professionally qualified in skills which the officers advising us today don't have. They have other skills. So I think we are fully entitled to refuse the application for the unsubstantiated case that an old building needs to be lost and to be replaced. So whether either bits of my thinking are in line with Councillor Jewell, I suspect we'll have a vote on the proposition. If that's approved, that's the end of the story. If it isn't, I think we then need a further discussion about what as a committee we are going to agree.
We have to have a vote on the proposition, Councillor Brown, but one thing I will do, and the point you've raised, is bring in Gavin Smith again. Gavin, can I just bring you in on the 2 points that have just been raised?
Yeah, of course you can. Councillor Brown is spot on when he talks about what we need to assess, and that's the proposal before us, and that is the demolition of an existing building, the complete demolition and a new build. I disagree with him when he says that the planning officers haven't given much thought to that. The report sets out that we have found some harm, but it also sets out that when we're balancing the application against the public good of the scheme, we think it's good to bring back, to reinstate a new house into a settlement of good design. But that is exactly what you should be looking at when you determine this planning application today, is the impact on the historic environment. That's the key issue. The road closure issue, as we've discussed, or the majority of this meeting, in fact, is separate to the planning application. What you need to focus on is the impact on historic environment. We as planning officers think it's acceptable, that that's something that you should take a look at and reach your own mind, come to your own conclusions. Thank you, Chairman.
Gavin, just before you go, Councillor Brown also raised the issue of deferral for a construction management plan.
Yes, we've already got a construction traffic management plan, but to be honest with the committee, the construction traffic management plan isn't a silver bullet to avoid all the problems that's being discussed. It's a usual construction management plan that will manage construction during that time, and inevitably there will be some disruption to the community. So it looks at things such as parking, unloading, wheel washing, dust drainage, the things that we usually look at. It's not going to say you don't need to close a road. It's not going to say anything like that. That's the separate matter. It does make mention of that, but that would be regulated at the separate stage.
Right, thank you. I've got no further X's in the box to make contributions, so I will go to the vote and we'll see what happens. So I've got a proposal by Councillor May, seconded by Councillor Mould, to approve as set out. Emma, could you take the vote, please?
Thank you, Chairman. I'll do an alphabetical roll call if you could indicate whether you're for, against or abstaining. Councillor Atherfold.
For.
Councillor Brown.
Against.
Councillor Bull.
Against.
Councillor Dyer.
Against.
Councillor Greenslade.
For.
Councillor Jewell.
Against.
Thank you. Councillor Kenny.
For.
Councillor Martin.
Against.
Councillor May.
For.
Councillor Mould.
For.
Councillor Thomas.
Against.
Councillor Williams.
Reluctantly for.
Chairman, the motion to approve has been tied by 6 votes in favour and 6 votes against.
Then I'm afraid my casting vote has to go the same way. I just don't think we're there with this application yet. So against, and I'm looking for something else on the table, please.
Chairman, I can confirm that the motion to approve has been lost on your casting vote.
Thank you. And I'm now looking for another proposal. Councillor Brown, I'm coming back to you.
Thank you for coming back to me. I will say something, but I also want to hear what Councillor Jewell has to say as well. I don't accept one bit of the advice that Gavin Smith has given us about the nature of the construction management plan. The construction management plan isn't a standard document. It is a document that we can specify what we want to be covered by it. And that gives a clear message to the applicant what he will need to do to satisfy the committee if he is to get the planning permission that he wants. That is now the more moderate of the options. The less moderate option is for the application to be refused. And I would have thought it would be pretty easy for officers to go back to the discussion that there's been at the meeting today and the points which have been made by the professionally qualified public speakers to draw up a more demanding document for the construction management plan and bring that back to us next meeting when third time lucky or whatever it can be dealt with. The other option is for the application to be refused altogether, and Mr. Smith has probably been closer to me on that one in that the report does say there is some harm and it is up to us to come to a view as to how much harm there is. But that's probably to me the more difficult option. So I just leave it at that for the moment.
Right, I'm going to see what Councillor Jewell wants to say on this first, because you both indicated that you may have a proposal, and then we'll go back to Gavin Smith, and also Councillor Atherfold has indicated. So Councillor Jewell, do you want to make some comments?
Yeah, I mean, I'm more on the way of refusing, because I mean, you know, in paragraph 25, the reason for this was brought back to us was to seek clarity on the plans, including regular shape. Well, they've come back and they've amended the elevations to show an increase in the height of 0.85. So that's where you can tie in the harm to the historical area in regards to the building. And the amended historical assessment, which is deemed to be sufficient. But I mean, surely with this increase in height, I don't think would be sufficient. But I'm quite happy to go with whatever Malcolm thinks for deferral as well, but I think the actual harm to the building, it can be redone without knocking down, as the first speaker said, with the metal frame and sign, and as Councillor Williams has highlighted in his professional career. It doesn't have to be demolished, and then if it doesn't have to be demolished, we don't have this issue with a complete road closure.
Right, we do have to move forward with this. Now, I've got Councillor Atherfold indicated and Councillor Kenny, but first, can I bring you in, Gavin, on the possible proposal on deferral for a more demanding traffic management plan? Okay, so a construction traffic management plan has been submitted. The construction traffic management plan, of course, does set out things that we usually look at. I wasn't trying to suggest anything else in my last comment. I think where Councillor Brown and I may have been on some disagreement is the content of that plan and how it can regulate road closure. Road closure, of course, is regulated by a separate process, so a planning condition shouldn't be regulating something on a separate process. That's the point I was trying to make. We could get the applicant to come back and give us more details on road closure, yet the farcical situation we'd find ourselves in is that when they then applied to the streetworks team for the licence to actually close the road, the streetworks team might say something different to the construction traffic management plan. We'd just be doing a process that
isn't for now, it's for later. I know that's hard to understand, but that's just how the processes are. In terms of the impact on the building itself and the conservation area, yes, it is a complete demolition, and we have acknowledged there's some harm by the loss of historic fabric and character. Probably best for Ellie to bring up the slideshow again if you want to go through that, and we can have a look at what's there and what you like about it and what's been proposed. We actually think that's what's been proposed is a better, more suitable design, and that it's livable. We're going to be using appropriate materials. The increase in the roof, it's going to make the roof connection at the moment a bit neater than what's there at the moment. So we think the design itself is actually acceptable, but of course you can disagree with us. But one thing we are all in agreement is that there has to be some element of harm by the demolition, because you'll be removing original material. Last point, Jackie, if I can, and the point about demolition and retention of part of the building, it's still not clear in my mind which would be the fastest in terms of the impact on the road, because I would imagine there's many ways of doing both and many ways of each scenario being fast or slow. We just don't know that information yet. Thank you.
Thank you. Now I'm just going to hear what the others who have indicated wish to say while people decide if they wish to make a proposal. I do need a proposal on the table. Councillor Atherfold.
I don't have a proposal, but I do have concern. Cornwall Council have issued a notice to say this building is structurally unsound. Back in November, we kicked this down the road to say, oh, we're not happy with the height of the roof. It's come back to us today, that's hardly been mentioned, and the building remains structurally unsound. It's been made very clear by the highways officer. It's not for the planning committee to decide issues with highways. I fail to see how we can kick this down the road again. I really am quite frustrated and concerned this building might fall down before we make a decision.
Thank you. Councillor Kenny.
Councillor Atherton took the words out of my mouth. I'm sorry to disagree with Councillor Brown, but I very carefully asked most of the objectors if it wasn't for the road closure, would they have an objection? And they didn't. I understand, I think there was something in the presentation explaining why the roof was going to go higher to make it slightly safer. I think if you're going to vote to turn it, I just would not, I hope you're not going to try and defer it again. That's ridiculous. If you're going to turn it down, let's have a vote on it, and then we'll see where we go from there.
Right, thank you. Councillor Mould, you're next.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, I mean, we've just voted not to, we just voted against this. Now, are we now going to say, are we going to have a vote and say that we do not want this building to be demolished? We want it to be refurbished. Is that where everybody's going with this? I'm with Councillor Kenny here. It's frustrating. We need to move on and make a decision. And I just don't, you know, I just don't see by deferring it or not deciding today what we're gaining. We're not actually gaining anything, because this is going to come back to us with the same set of problems all over again.
Yeah, I have some sympathy with that. Councillor May, you're next, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I think HEA are not giving a significant objection. On page 165, they say if the relevant materials are used, then, you know, it's not significant. I really think we should be taking their words into what we're deciding. It's a pity. I mean, neither Councillor Brown or myself were at the previous committee. So mine are fresh eyes today, as are his. So I'm seeing it one way, he's seeing it another. But, you know, I've had a huge, great project in my division that stood ugly for 30 years, and we were described as downtown Beirut in Penryn. And all by the ground floor as this one is, it had all caved in, and they had to put back the materials stone by stone. And this is similar. The applicant did say he would use what he could. And to me, this is better for Mevagissey than it standing as it is. And surely, committee, can't you see that? Thank you, Chairman.
Councillor Brown, I'm coming back to you. Looking for a proposal, please.
Yeah,
The only respect in which I'm disappointed by the discussion since I last spoke is that it's all been by people who voted for the application to be approved. None of the other people who voted for refusal have spoken. I'm going to propose that the application be deferred. The reason I'm doing for that is that it keeps our control of the process for a further report to the next meeting of the committee, including an extended construction management plan. I'm not talking about a traffic management plan. I'm talking about a construction management plan. And the reason is to give the applicant an opportunity to demonstrate to the committee that he can undertake the necessary work with the minimum disruption to the residents of Mevagissey who use the road which is affected. I'm not proposing a refusal. I think this is reasonable because I think it's probably the best we can do if we can get greater clarity, more in writing about what are legitimate planning issues decided by the committee. I think that is the best that we can do. So I will move that.
Thank you. Right, I have a proposer. Is there a seconder for that, please? Is anyone prepared to second deferral? Councillor Martin, thank you very much. Did you wish to speak?
Yes, thank you. I'd be prepared to second that. I believe this is a very delicate application and should be treated as such. So I support Malcolm Brown's proposal.
Thank you very much. I have nobody else. Oh, Councillor May, you've indicated.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. A CTMP has been mentioned on page 163. It doesn't give detail, but it is mentioned.
Yeah, Councillor Brown's asking for an extended CTMP, covering a little bit more, I think, than we would normally get, and for it to come back at the very next meeting. Gavin, did you want to comment on that at all?
No, of course, it's your wish, is how you wish to determine as you see fit. I'm just looking at the construction traffic management plan now, and there is a bit of detail in terms of what the developer thinks they can do with their schedule. But if members want more detail, I generally don't know what else they can do, but we can certainly, if that's your decision, I will ask the question on your behalf.
Thank you.
Chairman, if I could just interject as well. Sorry, I did have my hand up. Ben from Legal.
Oh, right.
Yeah, without wishing to state the obvious, because it's happened quite a few times in this committee that we sometimes run out of votes, don't we? So we're heading down the deferral route. I'm gauging from members that there may not be a lot of support for that, in which case we're probably going to be forced into the refusal route. So just be mindful of that, members, before it hits us, because it's happened in this committee a few times where we effectively run out of motions and votes and we have to just bring it back on another day. So that might be where we're heading. I don't know, but just to flag it up, Chair.
Thank you very much, Ben. That's helpful. Right, members, so we have a proposal proposed by Councillor Brown, seconded by Councillor Martin, that we defer for a further report coming to the next meeting of an extended construction management plan to demonstrate that this can be done with minimum disruption for residents. Emma, could you take the vote, please?
Thank you, Chairman. I'll do an alphabetical roll call. Could you indicate whether you're for, against or abstaining? Councillor Atherfold.
Councillor Atherfold against.
Councillor Brown.
For.
Councillor Bull.
For.
Councillor Dyer.
Against.
Councillor Greenslade.
Against.
Councillor Jewell.
Against.
Councillor Kenny.
For, because I don't want to reject.
Councillor Martin.
For.
Councillor May.
Against.
Councillor Mould.
Against.
Councillor Thomas.
Against.
Councillor Williams.
Against.
On the table again.
Chairman, the motion to defer has been lost by 4 votes in favour, 8 against and no abstentions.
Thank you. Right, then I'm looking for another proposal, please. Councillor Jewell, can I come to you?
Yes, I'll step up to the plate, don't worry about that. Yeah, we got to go for refusal and see what happens. I mean, otherwise Ben's going to be tearing his hair out. So we've got to go for refusal on the grounds of the harm, the increased height, and the building I feel can be kept without demolishing. Through that first speaker, he did quite a comprehensive report on doing the building with an inside ring. I think Councillor Williams will back me up on that it could be done without demolishing. We've got to go for that.
You're talking about impact on the historic conservation area, aren't you?
Yes.
Yeah.
Because there is been harm, so we can hang it on that one. Yeah.
Thank you. And do I have a seconder for that, please? Well, can I second that then, Ben?
I'll second that.
Oh, who was that?
Councillor Williams, second it.
Councillor Williams, thank you.
I second Alan's proposal.
Can I ask, Gavin, do you wish to comment on the...
Yeah, so I hear what you're saying. I think if you're going to turn it down to the harm to the building, the words I'd be using would be the proposal by reason of the complete demolition of the existing building and associated loss of historic fabric even in character, and due to its increase in height, would result in harm to attributes of the surrounding conservation area and setting of the nearby Grade 2 listed buildings. This harm is not outweighed by the public benefits associated with the proposed reinstatement of a home within a settlement, and the application is therefore contrary to policies 212 and 24 Cornwall Local Plan, HC1 of the Mevagissey Neighbourhood Plan, and the usual in the MPPF 193, 194, 196. And also I'd make reference to the Planning Listed Buildings and Conservation Areas Act, which gives us a statutory requirement to safeguard the character of a conservation area.
Thank you very much.
That's what I was going to say. That was just what I was going to say there.
So members, I have a proposal for refusal proposed by Councillor Jewell, seconded by Councillor Williams. Emma, would you take the vote, please?
Thank you, Chairman. I'll do an alphabetical roll call. If you could indicate whether you're for, against, or abstaining for the motion to refuse. Councillor Atherfold.
Against.
Councillor Brown.
For.
Councillor Bull.
For.
Councillor Dyer. Councillor Dyer, you're on mute.
That's better.
That's better. Are you? Oh, Councillor, you're back on mute again.
I'm in favour of voting against this proposal.
Are you for refusal?
I'm for refusal.
Thank you, Councillor Greenslade.
Against.
Councillor Jewell.
For.
Councillor Kenny.
Against.
Councillor Martin.
For.
Councillor May.
Against.
Councillor Mould.
Against.
Councillor Thomas.
Against.
Councillor Williams.
For.
Chairman, the motion to refuse has been tied by 6 votes in favour with 6 votes against.
So my casting vote is for. Thank you.
Okay. Thank
Could I
you,
have my
Chairman.
name recorded, please?
So vote correct, Chairman.
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, no, sorry, yeah, it was 6 votes in favour with 6 against. There's 12 members on the committee voting.
Yeah, I can confirm that, Emma, as well.
Thank you, Ben. Yes, so Chairman, I can confirm that the motion to refuse has been carried by 6 votes in favour, 6 votes against, and on the Chairman's casting vote it's been carried.
Can my name be recorded, please?
Yeah, and mine, please.
Yeah,
And
I'll make
mine.
a note.
And mine, otherwise we're all night.
Yeah. Righty.
Right, everyone, we're on the last application.
Thanks, committee.
Thank you, everyone. We're on the last application of the day, which is agenda item 4.6 PA20028816. Mr. R. Reid and Mr. J. Wright, Quarry, Trinance, Morgan Forth, Newquay, demolition of existing dormer bungalow and subsequent construction of replacement dwelling. The case officer is Samuel Fuller. Are you there, Samuel?
Yes, afternoon, Chairman.
Thank you. Over to you, please, Samuel.
Thank you. I assume that's visible for all?
Yes, it's fine. Thank you.
Lovely, thank you. Yeah, so this is agenda 4.6, the quarry in Trinant Morganporth. As said, it's the demolition of the existing dormer bungalow and the subsequent construction of a replacement dwelling. The key issues for this application are the principle of development, whether the replacement dwelling is acceptable, and the character impact of this replacement dwelling to the site and the wider area. So this kind of location plan outlines the site in red there, highlighted as the proposal site, and the county wildlife site in black, which is to the west and then to the southeast. Another location plan showing the site edged in red, the beach to the west there, and then there's a network of footpaths. That footpath that runs to the west, up to the north, and then down to the south is the southwest coast path. Just for clarity. So this is an aerial shot of the site, as red again. Morganporth is to the east there, and the beach to the west. The beach is that wildlife county wildlife site. Sorry. So this is the existing block plan. Just shows again the site in red and the surrounding dwellings. Access to the east of the site up to Trinant. So this is the proposed block with context of the settlement, and there's highlights to recent approvals within the area as well. So we've got High Cove Farm to the north, which is here, Red Cove, which is here, Quarry, the application site. We've got Tanzara, which is here, Little Dragon, and then Sand Dunes. They're just recent approvals there, which I can just highlight development or recent development in the area and on the cliff side. Stop going. Not sure why it's not going to the next slide. There we go. Sorry. Yes, so this is the existing elevations of the bungalow, the dormer bungalow on site. Just shows all four elevations there. So this is an existing plan showing the existing garden levels. So the red line is the kind of the higher existing garden level, which I believe is in line with the dwelling at the moment, and then it steps down to a lower garden terrace, which is highlighted in blue, which is the kind of lawn areas there, and then there's the proposed extent of garden to following existing. So that's the kind of the proposed area which will be kept as kind of part of the proposal. So this is just a comparison diagram, just shows the difference between the proposed and the existing. The existing in red and the proposed dwelling in blue, and then the green line is kind of where the garden area will be kept natural to the south, and the fencing will provide some protection for that. Again, this is the proposed landscaping plan. Again, shows the existing shrub which will be maintained, and that'll be conditioned via a landscape condition, so that'll be there, and we can get details of that landscape plan. There's an extensive shrub that'll be lost, and then the proposed as well. Yeah, just shows you the kind of landscape potential. So this is a plan, again, just showing the existing section and the proposed section. So there's quite a degree of excavation that's going to occur on this site to allow for the proposed dwelling. The reason for that was in my report, but it's just to set back the dwelling so it doesn't impinge upon the kind of the natural kind of vegetation to the south of the site. That's just kind of a character thing that was kind of carried on from the pre-app that was submitted. So that was a good aspect of the scheme. But yeah, it just shows, I guess, the excavation that's going to occur. It's quite substantial, but should be mitigated by the design and the landscaping there. It's the proposed elevations of the dwelling. Just shows all elevations of the proposed dwelling and how it will look. I've got some further visuals as well, so that should help because the elevations aren't overly clear. So this is the proposed ground floor, just showing the internals of the dwelling and where it will be sited. It does highlight kind of the aspects which have been changed throughout the process of the application. So there's the extent of the west elevation that's been reduced by 4.5. I think it was around here. Number 2, there's a feature spine wall that was removed to limit the height. The width of the rear wing sorry, has been reduced by 900 mil. Again, the eastern flank has been reduced by 2 meters to kind of limit the impact of the landscape garden there. And there's been additional greenery, and there'll be a pergola along that little pathway there as well. And the overall width of the building has been reduced by about, I think, 6.1 meters throughout the application. This is the proposed first floor. Again, just shows the location of the dwelling and the internal layout. Again, it's annotated by the reductions and changes that have been made throughout the planning process. And this, again, just as the plot plan, just showing the roof plan there. Didn't show too much there. So this is the proposed elevations for the dwelling proposed. So the dwelling here is the one proposed. There's a blue outline which shows where the existing dwelling was. Importantly, it's kind of important to just highlight the difference in ridge height. So the outline, the existing dwelling was 30.334 AOD, which is kind of how high it is above the sea level. So it just shows you kind of a dating point of where we're measuring against. And then Bob Trails, which is the neighbouring plot, is actually slightly higher. So it's about 1.3 meters higher than than Corey, the existing dwelling. And then the proposed dwelling, the ridge, is actually lower than the existing dwelling and the neighbouring dwelling as well. So just shows you how it will look in its context and how we're not actually elevating the ridge height at present. So this is the just the proposed visual, just to kind of give you a visualization of how it would look as in line with the proposed. Again, got the annotations which show the changes that have gone throughout the planning process. I think I highlighted them slightly earlier. This area here, this little grey area here, is the retaining wall, which was shown earlier in the PowerPoint. This kind of just shows how high it will protrude above the ridge height of the proposed dwelling. I believe it might be about, I think, 1.6 meters above the ridge height. So it will be on show, but not significantly. So that's a mitigating factor, and that'll be covered in green mesh as well to try and integrate it into the landscape. And then, importantly, the landscape and garden vegetation and gorse to the south of and to the west of extent and east of the site will be maintained. This will be maintained by a landscaping addition, as mentioned before. So yeah, hopefully that's a helpful visualization. So going on to some photos I took. So this is the existing dwelling from the southwest coast path. So that's looking from the south. So that's from an elevated position. The proposal site is here. That's Quarry, and that's Bob Drowse. And then there's the rest of the assessment to the east there. I think that's at Trinault as well. Again, just another photo from a slightly more elevated position on the southwest coast path, looking from the south. Again, you've got the, where's my cursor? There's Quarry, the application site, so that bounds relatively around there. Bob Drowse, Trinault. And then some dwellings in the background. I believe there is consent for that to be redeveloped, and there's a few up there being redeveloped as well. And then again, the settlement to the east there. So this is a photo from the Southwest Coast Path again. It's from the west. So as you kind of walk up the hill, and Corey is right here on your right, if you are walking up the hill. I think that's Tanzara, which is a really recently developed property there. I think that was on one of the earlier slides, I think on the context slides, which kind of showed recent development there. It's got a hotel, I believe, as well. So just shows you from that perspective. I believe the Ramblers did have objection about the overbearing impact to the Southwest Coast Path, and just shows you kind of what the current height of the existing property is, and then kind of where the proposal sits and what that impact will be. Again, this is another photo. So this is an elevated position from Trinant, so from the settlement on the cliffside looking towards the site. So here's Quarry, there's the sea, Bob Trails, and then Trinant there. It's just showing again the context and different side. So this is a photo from the beach. It was a bit misty on that day, which doesn't really appreciate kind of the upper reaches of the hillside there. But yeah, that's the application site here, and then Bob Trails is just around there. So this is at low tide. So normally you wouldn't be able to see it if it was at high tide because water runs up to here. But yeah, it will be visible on the beach, at low tide, and people will be able to see it. And from the Southwest Coast Path, which runs along site here. Again, just a slightly closer picture of the site. So there's dwelling there, Trinant, and then Bob Trails is around there somewhere. But yeah, it's similar to the other one. And then this is another photo showing the kind of the context again of the settlement. So the quarry is in here. That's Trinant. I think that's Tanzara there, and just shows you kind of the context of the settlement from the beach side, that is, again at low tide. So the balance of considerations, the proposal is viewed as being acceptable in principle, being replacement dwelling. We believe the dwelling is already within the settlement of the Morgan Porth, so we've looked upon it in line with policy 3 rather than policy 7, which would restrict its size to a degree. So that's how we looked at it in terms of policy 3 compliance. We believe it is compliant. And then the dwelling is considered to be, maintain the character of the site and area. We believe that with the landscape and the design proposed and the kind of height reduced and the changes that have been made throughout the application, that it will be able to maintain the character of the site and wide area and is acceptable in an officer's view. And yes, and then suitable access can be achieved as well on site in line with kind of how it's existing at the moment. So the officer's recommendation is to approve with conditions as set out within the report. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Samuel. Now we do have a. Oh, I'm getting feedback. I don't know if everyone else is. We do have a speaker, a resident in objection, and that's Mr. William Corbett. Are you with us, Mr. Corbett? Can you hear us?
Chairman, if Mr. Corbett can press *6 to unmute his telephone, please.
Chairman.
Hello, Mr. Corbett. I think just muted again.
Chairman, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you now, Mr. Corbett. Thank you for joining us. You have 3 minutes to present the case, and you'll be told when 30 seconds remain. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chairman and members. I think I can be mercifully brief here after your last application. The question raised by this application is simply this: is the replacement dwelling that's proposed here acceptable in this very sensitive clifftop location? Both the parish council and local residents are becoming increasingly concerned at the size of rebuilds being requested in the village. This is beginning to alter the whole feel of Trinant, with rebuilds and other ancillary buildings often covering a disproportionately large part of their plots. This is at odds with the reasoning that led to the area of special character designation under the former Cornwall local plan. And even if that policy has not been carried through to the Cornwall local plan, Policies 212 and 23 seek to achieve the same effect. The new house now proposed is simply too large to fit onto the existing footprint. Therefore, a massive amount of excavation behind the house will have to take place and to lower the footprint, and the new building is going to dominate its setting and the beach below. The acceptability of this proposal is therefore a matter of planning judgment. The Ramblers, the Parish Council and the Principal Landscape Officer all feel that the building is simply too large for this site and unsympathetic to its cliff-top location. The case officer thinks otherwise. I'd like to think that where a Parish Council requests a more modest proposal, the committee may be inclined to support them. I'm sure you all have sensitive locations within your own wards where you would like to see some restriction put on the scale of new development. That's possible here, citing policies 212 and 23 of the local plan as reasons to refuse the application. We're not suggesting that a replacement dwelling is unacceptable, merely that this one is going to have an unacceptable impact on the beach and the coastal footpath and should be scaled back. It's a case of the public interest versus the private interest. The only other point I would like to make is that I sent some photographs of the site to the committee yesterday, and I think one of the key views is from across the beach, from the Merrimore side and the Coast Guard's cottages. Those weren't shown to you in the officer's presentation. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you very much, Mr. Corbett. Perhaps you just stay there in case of questions. Are there any questions for the speaker, please? No, I see no indication. Would you confirm, please, Vice Chairman?
Sorry, I was muted. At present, I can't see any.
No, thank you. Then thank you very much, Mr. Corbett.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Vice Chairman.
We move on to hearing from Dr. Liz Mackenzie of St Morgan Parish Council, who's speaking in objection. Can you hear us, Dr. Mackenzie?
Hello.
Hello?
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 Can you hear me?
Yes, you're a little bit faint, but perhaps if you could speak up a little bit. Dr. Mackenzie, you have 3 minutes to put your case and you'll be told when 30 seconds remain. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Madam Chairman and the committee. St Morgan Parish Council maintain our objection to this application, considering the proposal is just too large for the site, and it would have a detrimental effect on the visual scene and the coastal path at variance with the Cornwall Local Plan Policies 2 and 12. As you've seen, Quarry is a dormer bungalow situated in a very prominent position on the cliff top to the northern side of Morgan Port. The existing building sits on a narrow ledge cut into the hillside, and the main elevation faces southwest. The bungalow is surrounded by a natural coastal garden, and the site borders the coastal footpath from Cornwall to Morgan Port. The PC accepts that a replacement dwelling is likely to be larger than the existing. However, from the pre-application stage, the PC have felt that the proposal is too large for the site. As you've seen, the application seeks to demolish the bungalow, and the replacement, much larger two-storey house, has 6 bedrooms, each en suite, plus an indoor pool spa on the ground floor. Clearly, this would not fit on the existing footprint. Due to the topography of the site, to achieve the vastly extended footprint of the proposed new dwelling will involve very substantial excavation and engineering works which are not sympathetic to the prominent cliff-top setting. This will have a material harmful effect on the wider scene viewed from the beach and the coast path, and is likely to have put the existing planting at risk. Re-establishing planting to screen the new dwelling would be challenging in the coastal location. In our view, this does not accord with either Policy 12 of the Cornwall Local Plan requirement that new developments are of an appropriate scale, density, layout, height and mass, with an understanding and response to the landscape, seascape and townscape, or Policy 2 referring to the development being in accord with its location and noting the value and sensitivity and the character and importance of landscapes. As noted in the officer's report, the Parish Council's concerns are shared by the county's Principal Landscape Officer, who noted the extent and height of the building and also the landscape character and visual sensitivity of the site. And she has similar concerns about the current slightly amended proposal, suggesting a more dramatic contraction of the western extent of the building to reduce the building's dominance within the setting to a more acceptable level. The Ramblers Association also consider the proposal threatens to overwhelm the immediate setting and impose considerable harm on the enjoyment of the Southwest Coast Path. The recent amendments offer apparently external cosmetic changes with no appreciable changes to building dimensions. Thank you, and hence impact on the location. Therefore, the Parish Council considers the present scheme does not conform with either Policy 2 or 12 of the local plan and respectfully request that the committee do not support it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Mackenzie. Perhaps you just stay there a minute in case there are any questions for you. Are there any questions? Thank you. For Dr. Mackenzie, members. I see no indication. Can you confirm, please, Vice Chairman?
Yes, I can agree, Chairman.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Mackenzie. We move swiftly on to the agent for the application who's speaking in support. That's Chloe Pitt. Are you there, Ms. Pitt?
Hello.
Good. Yeah, you can hear us?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you. You have 3 minutes to speak now, and you'll be told when 30 seconds remain. Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon, members and officers of committee. My name is Chloe Pitt, and I'm a chartered town planner from Lawrence Associates, who are acting as planning agent for the application before you. Members should be aware that the application has followed the correct and promoted pre-application process by engaging with both the parish and Cornwall Council prior to the submission of the application. Whilst officers are comfortable with the proposal, the parish council are unfortunately against, with their latest comments found at paragraph 16 of the committee report, stating that the proposed new house is simply too large for the important cliff top location. The purchaser of bobtails is to demolish and rebuild that property that would be materially damaging to the cliff top, and the site falls outside of the restoreable plan, and therefore policy 7 applies to the assessment. In response to the comments raised, firstly, there is no requirement for a replacement dwelling in this location to be the same size as the existing dwelling. The second point involves speculation over the redevelopment of bobtails, which is immaterial to this assessment. Regards to the final point, the settlement boundary for Restormal no longer exists, and the site, without doubt, sits within the built form of Morgan Porth, as verified by your officer at paragraph 27 of the committee report. As such, policy 7 of the Cornwall local plan is simply not relevant. Moving on to the comments received by the landscape officer, the comments set out that the proposed dwelling is higher than the existing. However, as shown on the plans included within the officer presentation, this is simply not the case. Whilst the proposed building is indeed larger, it is set back into the cliff and the bulk is largely hidden from view. The amount of building that extends forward of the existing building line is therefore very limited. The replacement dwelling would change the character and erode some of the open nature of the site, but the actual harm is offset by the high quality design, inclusion of clearing of the dwelling and landscape garden, and most importantly, using recessive materials. The proposal ensures that the majority of the plot, including the heavy planting in front of the house, remains undeveloped, unlike the approach taken locally. Members should be aware that several large replacement dwellings have been approved or allowed under appeal that include Red Cove, Toscan and High Cove Farm to the north, Tanzara and Little Dragon to the south, and Beachview and Dragon Spring to the east. In consequence, the replacement of quarry, which has been designed in a way that deliberately avoids harm, would ensure that development is not out of keeping to a material extent with other development in the vista.
30 seconds remain.
No neighbours have raised any objection to this application. This, added with the support from the local member and qualified planners, warrants a request for members to support the officer's recommendation and allow this application to come to a positive end after 10 months within the planning system. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Perhaps you just stay there a moment for questions, please. Councillor Jewell, please, and then Councillor Kenny.
Hello, yes, thank you very much indeed for that presentation. Could you be so kind as to give us the square meterage of the existing bungalow and the proposed development, please?
Okay, so the existing footprint is 235 and the proposed is 420. That's an increase of 185.
Yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Kenny.
Thank you. The parish council representative mentioned the need to do some quarrying out in those. Is that something you'll have to do this build?
Yes, and the application was submitted with a report to confirm that the stability of the cliff is safe to do so.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I see no further questions indicated. Can you confirm, please, Vice Chairman?
Yes, I agree, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Ms. Pitt. And we move on to hearing from the divisional member, which is Councillor Fitter. Hello, Councillor Fitter. Are you there?
I'm here, Madam Chairman. I'm here.
Nice to hear your voice.
I didn't think we'd ever get here, Madam Chairman.
Me too. Councillor Fitter, you know the rules. You'll be asked to sum up after 5 minutes.
Thank you very much indeed, Madam Chairman. Members, I've put my brief views on the with the officer's report are on page 197 and 198. I just wanted to pick up really about the landscape issue, because quite frankly, I just find, if I can deal with the footpath people first of all, I find it extraordinary that they should have selected this application amongst all the applications that have been in Morganporth to suddenly come up with a view as to its suitability and how it may distract from the joys of walking the coastal footpath. I walk this footpath every week, sometimes twice a week, right up to Red Cove and around. And the last thing you do in actual fact is to look inland. You actually look out to enjoy the sea and the beach. So to look in, I find it extraordinary. And I can honestly say that certainly this new development may be more prominent, but when you walk the footpath, you barely observe the property that's in there at the moment. And at the bottom, in actual fact, when you get down to the bottom, there's if the officer can show the bottom picture again, go on, sir, go on, past there, sir, go on, past there. No, he's not going to go past there. That's the view from the beach anyway, but that's beside the point. The thing is that there is no landscape issues, because the high points that have been taken from the coastal footpath the officer shows are to, as you're looking at that picture now, they're on the right hand side, and it's a very limited walk. It's a narrow stretch of the footpath as it comes from the middle steps down to what we call the north steps, and this new development is above what is the north steps. So, to actually pretend that it would distract and upset people is ridiculous. The landscape officer, I think they must have done a desktop assessment, because it just doesn't, in my mind, bear out the actual facts. I'm also, the people in Trenance and this area, and it's quite a big area, they're very, very protective of redevelopment. They're very vocal. And I suspect you will see when another application comes to you, probably in the next meeting of your committee, Madam Chairman, there will be vocal members. On this occasion, no member of the community has actually contacted me and said, gosh, what's happening? This is terrible, etc. and so forth. Sometimes you get some sort of negative comments, but nothing at all. Everyone is quite content. It's a tired building. A very nice Lady Hall, I think it was Lady Hall, lived there before, and it needs redevelopment. New development is not in everybody's mind. I understand that entirely. But, if the person wants to invest and wants to build something that is fit for the 21st century, and it's not going to interfere in the amenities of the local people, it's not going to harm the landscape, then okay, it has 6 bedrooms and 6 bathrooms, etc. and so forth. So be it. It's rather grand, it's rather lovely. I wish I could afford it. I can possibly afford the bathroom, and that'd be all. But no, it won't interfere. And at the bottom of this picture, as you've got in front of you now, where this coastal footpath winds up around, you don't see anything at the bottom. You cannot, it's terraced all the way up through. So, members will have to make your judgment on the more detailed objections offered from the parish council, the parish chairman and the chairman of the parish committee, and you will make your judgment accordingly. But I myself support this application. It does no harm to the area. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you very much, Councillor Fitter. Are there any questions for the divisional member, please? Councillor Kenny, please.
Thank you. John, in your experience, how stable is the cliff in that area?
Well, I've read the report. Further up from where you're standing, this end, where that picture was taken, this cliff there is very, very unstable, exceptionally unstable. But what happens, Joanna, is that the sweep of the tide comes in from the north side, and it, in actual fact, sweeps around in a curl and bounces off the cliff that we were standing on taking this picture. So the cliff that is forming the structure into where you've got the development, that in actual fact is pretty stable. It hasn't. We've had no cliff falls to my knowledge in my lifetime there, but certainly the other side, gosh, there's been any amount of cliff falls. But here, because it's protected from the sea sweeps in a curve. I hope that helps you.
Thanks.
Thank you. I've got no other questions indicated.
Madam Chairman, oh, sorry, I was going to say, to answer help to Joanna, that where the falls are in the part that's where it's brown here. Over opposite the control site, you'll see it's still a lot of green. There is where we got massive erosion on this side. But that side, which is a different part because of the cove that goes down, there is no erosion. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you. I see no other questions indicated. Can you confirm, please, Vice Chairman?
Yes, I agree, Chairman.
Yeah, thank you. Then thank you very much, Councillor Fitter. We move on to questions of the Planning Officer. Are there any, please?
Negative, Chairman.
Yeah, no indication of questions to the Planning Officer. It's fairly straightforward one. This
Run out of steam, I think.
Well, thank goodness we've come to a straightforward one. So we move into debate. Who wishes to start it, please? Councillor, sorry, the little blue squares.
Councillor May, Chairman.
Councillor May. Thank you. Councillor May.
Well, listening to the local member, I know there's a bit of a conflict with the parishes, but I'm going to support and say recommend as laid out. Thank you.
So you're proposing as set out, Councillor May?
Yes, Chairman.
Lovely, thank you. Do I have a seconder for that?
Yes, ma'am. John Dyer.
Councillor Dyer seconding. Right, now I do have some people who've indicated they wish to speak, so I'll have to give them the chance to do so. Councillor Atherfold.
I'm not entirely sure where the reasoning goes through any of the decisions we make. This is clearly nearly double the size of the existing building that's there. It's out of character of the local area. Whether or not you can see it from the footpath or the beach is immaterial in my way of thinking. The photos have been really useful because they just show it's out of scale, proportion and style. Whether or not precedents have been set, as I understand it, precedent is no longer material planning consideration. I can't support this.
Right, thank you, Councillor Atherfold. It's subjective, isn't it? Councillor Jewell, you're next, please.
Yeah, I completely agree with the previous councillor. I mean, this building, I asked the agent, it's going from 235 square metres to 420. So it's double the size. You've got the comments from the Ramblers Association, which even they said that the existing building was big enough, but this is a whopper, isn't it? I mean, the photograph we can see now, you compare it to that bungalow, it's like a dog kennel, isn't it, compared to the one they're proposing? I mean, is this what we want? I mean, it's nothing in keeping, and the views from people walking on the beaches and the tides out, looking back, they do look back. We all do that. It's something else, isn't it? But I mean, I will see how this first motion goes, and if it fails, I will be proposing refusal on. And we've got plenty to refuse on. Plenty of plans.
If it fails, Councillor Jewell, I'll come back to you.
No worries.
Right, Councillor Martin, you're next, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was just planning to second the proposal. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Councillor Kenny.
Thank you. I don't have a problem with the look of it. It's lower. Actually, my problem is, although I've read the report and I hear what the councillor Fitter says, I'm very dubious about any significant build this close to the edge of a cliff. So but I think on the look of it, I don't think it's too obtrusive. It's larger, but it hasn't got the height. So, but as I say, I've got concerns about. I'm going to go back and read that report again.
Thank you. Councillor Mould.
Madam Chair, thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, it is huge. It's double. It's not double, but it's at least 2/3 bigger again. And I come from a division where this happens regularly. And you know, you have a site, you have a reasonable size dwelling on it, and this gets built. Now, I don't have a problem with that. I don't like the design, but then I'm not a modern, you know, design is in the eye of the beholder. I do, however, have concerns with Councillor Kenny about this, because it's very close to the cliff. You are actually digging out to make something a good third bigger than what you've already got. And I do have concerns. However, is that a material planning? Because if this should happen and they do dig out and everything goes belly up, I'm a bit unsure about where we go with this, because in one respect, you know, if someone's bought it, they're going to build it. It's huge. It's all the rest of it. Good luck to them. But I do have concerns about the stability of all of this, and I agree with Councillor Kenny. So I'm reserving judgment for a moment, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mould. And I will go to Gavin Smith just for a moment, and just before we go to the vote. Gavin, could you perhaps inform the councillors as to how relevant their fears about it being so close to the edge of the cliff are in terms of planning?
Yeah, of course. So stability is something that we do take into account when making a decision, as does the building control team at the next phase. So you may have seen it. Hang on, let me go through the report. Well, we've consulted our coastal protection officer on this. That's at paragraph 17. And he concludes by saying, although some erosion is predicted within around the assumed 100-year design life of the building, the proposed dwelling itself is not shown to be impacted, with any long-term erosion risk being limited to the southwest extent of the garden, thus making risk to the dwelling acceptable. Should planning permission be granted, it is, however, advised the applicants be made aware of the long-term risk to the garden through an informative. So we've taken advice from our expert on that matter, and that's how we're planning to proceed.
I want to add.
Sorry.
I was just going to add that you know, the drainage team have kind of conditioned as part of their comments as well a coastal vulnerability assessment as well. So that's conditioned as part of those set out within the report. So that should hopefully cover things as well.
Thank you very much. That is helpful. Right, we'll go to the vote and see where that leaves us. So I have a proposal by Councillor May for approval as set out, seconded. I'm sorry, by Councillor Jewell. No, not by Councillor Jewell.
Councillor Dyer.
Was Councillor Dyer. I am so sorry. It's the end of a very long day. Seconded by Councillor Dyer. Emma, could you take the vote, please?
Thank you, Chairman. I'll do an alphabetical roll call. If you could indicate whether you're for, against, or abstaining from the motion to approve. Councillor Atherfold.
Against.
Councillor Bull.
For.
Councillor Dyer.
For.
Councillor Greenslade.
For.
Councillor Jewell.
Against.
Councillor Kenny.
Abstain.
Councillor Martin.
For.
Councillor May.
For.
Councillor Mould.
Reluctantly for.
Councillor Thomas.
For.
Councillor Williams.
For.
Thank you, Chairman. I can confirm that the motion to approve has been carried by 8 votes in favour with 2 against and 1 abstention.
Thank you very much. And that brings us to any other business, and there is no other business of urgency. So I want to thank Vice Chairman, all the officers and all of you. It's been a very long day for you all, and we always seem to have at least one really complicated and contentious issue. I think today we've had 2. So thank you very much, all of you, and see you next time.
Thank you, Madam Chair, very much. Bye-bye, everybody.
I'll just wait for confirmation that you've had the live stream cease, Chairman.
Thank you.
Thank you and good night.